What's going to happen now? Thanks, Michael. First, Patty, I want to thank you for loving my brother and for being the best partner he could ever have. You loved him. He loved you. But your care and devotion to Tony over the past 9 years was nothing like any of us have ever seen before, and the gratitude of all of the family and friends is beyond measure. We all love you, and we thank you for your devotion right to the very end. Best sister-in-law. I've got lots of sister-in-laws. Well, two. But I'm going to talk about Tony and how he came to be him. Tony was, and now he's gone, and that's the very sad part. But there was much to Tony, and he lived a very full life. You all know him from different times in his life, and I hope that some of you will talk about some of those times. I'm going to shed some light on why Tony was the guy you all loved as we celebrate his life. To start at the beginning, our parents, Jack and the very pregnant Betty Lou and young Chris, traveled home to Binghamton for the Christmas holidays. Their return to Jackson Heights was put off by the December 30th birth of Tony. And that birth was one for the records. Never had they seen an 11-pound plus baby delivered at all, let alone in natural childbirth. Yes, ladies. The nurses shared this phenomenon as they paraded Tony around the hospital, showing him off as the biggest baby ever born there. So that was Tony's grand start to life. He continued his youth as someone to be noticed. He was one of the cutest babies, as you saw in the pictures, Gerber-style baby. And my mom always was stopped by saying, "Oh, what a beautiful child." Well, the family continued to grow. 18 months later, I was born, and then another 4 years, John Jr. arrived. We grew up in a very nice 4-bedroom house on Maitland Avenue in Teaneck. I was the only girl, so I had my own room, and Chris, being the oldest, had his own room, and that left Tony and Johnny as roommates. So, although it was a nice-sized room, I do believe Tony longed to have one of his own, but he shared it with Johnny. And you might be doing the math, and yes, Chris was the oldest, John was the youngest, and me, so that left Tony as the middle child. Maybe that's why he only had 2 children. But Johnny's going to talk about that later. We all survived and we thrived in Teaneck and our schooling at St. Anastasius. Tony aged into preteens, and the largeness of his birth returned, and trips to the JCPenney Husky department began. And so did the teasing about his size, and it probably took more of a toll on him than any of us understood. And the constant teasing impacted who he was to become. The new Tony, with sarcasm, his pain in the assness, but also his empathy. By 8th grade, he made up his mind. He was not going to be fat anymore. He was going to go to Paramus Catholic, and he was going to play football, which of course meant that he had to get into shape, and by God he did, but maybe apparently not by the first day of high school, as Warren said he was still attending the rally. But that changed quickly when he got onto the football team. Number 76. Right, boys? Yes. From his experience, he gained confidence and he learned how to be strong and resilient. And well, let's all agree, Tony didn't take fools lightly. All the tools he took forward with him to help him in his career and his successes. But going back, we always look at the new Tony as really tough. And so when our family dog, Lady, was reaching the end of her time, the vet said, "Bring her down and we'll take care of her." And we all said, "Oh, okay, Tony will do it." You know, he's so tough. And he picked up our sweet little Lady and he took her to the vet. And years later, Patty said, "You have no idea the impact that had on him." He was so sad, and that was awakening about how the rough exterior, there really was a very sensitive side to Tony. And we were brought up with our parents always telling us we should go to college, but we had to work and be willing to help pay for our education. And so Tony was a caddy, and he worked for a moving company, and then he went to that store on Route 17. And the luckiest day of his life happened when he met Patty. And we already heard some of those details. But before going to college, Tony took some of that money that he earned. And one day, he drove into our driveway in Glen Rock in a little classic Triumph. I believe you saw the picture of that car in the slideshow. He looked so cool, and he knew he looked cool in that car. But the story behind that car was my mom's dad, Granddad Bozzi. He would pull into our driveway in Teaneck, New Jersey, when he was leaving Florida for the winter and going back to Binghamton, New York. And he would drive into the driveway, and his golf clubs were sticking out of the back of that little Triumph. And I think that's when Tony knew he wanted Granddad's kind of life. Golf and hanging loose. So I never got a straight answer on that golf thing because he wouldn't play with me because I was a woman. But Michael did give us a little insight. He wasn't as good as he pretended. And he was good at hanging loose. He taught me a life lesson on how to stay calm in a crisis. I was at their house in New Milford, and it was just Tony and I. We went downstairs, and there was water all over the basement. And I started to get in my action mode to help him. He's like, Mary Lou, just relax. It'll get taken care of. And under his guidance and calmness, under pressure, we systematically took care of the problem, just like Tony always did. But my fondest connection with Tony is that I learned early on that he always had my back. Yes, someone mentioned it, that South Pacific play at Paramus Catholic. Tony was a sailor, a drunken sailor as it turns out on Sunday night during the plays. That's another story for somebody. I was the curtain girl. And at rehearsal one night, I didn't close the curtain on time, and the director called me out on stage and started yelling at me that you gotta do it at the right time, you know. And Tony came on stage and said, "Stop yelling at my sister, she'll get it right." So that's when I knew he would always have my back, and he did many, many times, and had many other people's backs too. So Patty, Tony's beautiful family, I want to thank you all for helping us celebrate Tony's life and how he's touched so many people. He would be happy and maybe a little surprised at how much his life mattered and touched so many people. So, and thank you all for being here. The youngest, John,
she's not done.
couldn't be here. But he did write a little something, and he asked me if I would read it for him. I had it all queued up, and that's not queued up. Okay, I'm almost done. This is longer than I thought. Okay, Tony, you got stuck with me as your roommate. When I came along, perhaps an offshoot of being the middle child. I remember being pretty non-eventful. No major pillow fights, no bloody noses, no black eyes. Middle child syndrome always held a negative connotation, so I looked it up. I was surprised at the positive definition. Peacemaker, enjoys strong relationship outside of the family, independent, successful in their career, all traits that apply to you. The first group I'm pretty sure you created a strong bond outside with the family with was at college with those Fiji brothers. And that is why no one was more surprised than me when you chose me as your best man, your little brother with hair to his shoulders. From there, we started to embark on our own personal journeys. You got a job at a paper mill in Louisiana. I went on a cross-country adventure with my girlfriend, and one of our first stops was to see you, Patty, and the new addition to your family, Katie, in Louisiana. I was proud to see you as an executive. We had a catfish dinner, and we saw Rocky at the local cinema. Then soon you were back in New Jersey, and I started a career in New York City, and I was faced with a decision. I thought, who's the most rational, business-minded person I know? And all roads led to you, Tony. I made an appointment and met you in your rec room. The kids had gone to bed. You just finished a day's work. And you said, what's the question? And I said, I have an agency that wants to represent me. Not sure what to do. Tony, do you have any others? Me, not at this time. Tony, well, there's your answer. I now have to navigate for the first time in the world without any big brother. I'm lucky to have a very strong-minded, bright big sister who is actually reading this. Peace, brother.